This episode of the Kill by Kill podcast is brought to you in part by the new Quiver distribution film, The Wrath of Becky. That's right. 2 years after escaping a savage attack on her own family, Becky is attempting to rebuild her life. But when her new home is broken into by a brutish group calling themselves the Noble Men, and they take her beloved dog Diego, she returns to her old ways to protect herself and get revenge. The Austin Chronicle declares The Wrath of Becky literally a bloody good time. That's right, The Wrath of Becky, starring Lulu Wilson and Sean William Scott, is now playing in theaters, so check your local listings for times and locations. And now, the body count continues. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying time is here. That's right, we're talking about Slaughter High. Or is it April Fool's Day? Depends on who you paid to go see. Because at one point it was both. Here on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal, Patrick Hamilton, coming to you once again from the Doddsville County High School of Surrey, England, United States of America. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we are dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. And boy, is the film that we're discussing today chock full of quote-unquote characters. We're talking about the 1986 film Slaughter High, a film with 3 fucking directors for some reason. And we're talking about it in the hopes that a 35-year-old teen's untimely end is just the beginning of the jokes that we might make at their expense. As always, there's only one person I trust that if she gets blood all over her face, she'll find the nearest high school bathtub to wash it off. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing today, Gina?
Before we go on, I'd like to offer an apology, a mea culpa. Mm-hmm. An underrated grand dame of stage and screen, Miss Stockard Channing. Stockard, I'm sorry. For many years, you were my go-to as the most unconvincing high school student in a movie ever of all time. I stand corrected. You look great in Grease. Yeah. You're absolutely convincing as a 17-year-old. Yes. I'm completely wrong about it, and I'm heartily sorry. I know you listen to the show, so I
huge supporter of the pod.
I wanted to let you know that I accept my wrongness, and I am laying with my wrongness.
Yeah. Well, you made this bed with, screen and stage legend Stockard Channing. You should now rest in it, because we're confronting Slaughter High now, a film that wants to be a lot of things and simply cannot be any of them. It wants to be an American slasher. Well, you made it in England. It wants to be Friday the 13th, but it forgot to fill it with characters. And then it wants to be a gore fest. And for the second act of this thing, by God, it is. And it just forgets to be that at the opening and the closing. It just can't quite seem to. It is a wild motion picture. Now, have you ever seen Slaughter High prior to me forcing this film upon you?
I feel like I must have, because it's another one of those 80s slasher movies. It has a very distinctive VHS cover.
Yes.
But that may actually be the best thing about it. So I was pretty sure that I had seen this, but when watching, I'm like, I don't really remember any of this.
It's questionable whether or not it's in fact memorable. I mean, truth be told, Slaughter High is one of those movies I've had in the bullpen since we started it, and we considered starting to do movies outside of Friday the 13th because Jason was slowly driving us insane and we just needed mini breaks. We just needed something to take us outside of Crystal Lake, if only for a couple of weeks. And this is very much a Friday the 13th clone in that one of the producers is someone who was an original producer on Friday the 13th. It's definitely made with the goal of tapping into that market. And it just forgets to do a lot of the things that make Friday the 13th really interesting to watch. If anyone's like, well, those characters are so interchangeable, I would love for you to come over to Slaughter High, because this is a movie that takes pains to put up characters, high school portraits, which are actually their casting shots. And they put it up against the wall with their character names in the hopes that you'll remember these people are in the movie, but when they're not there, I couldn't tell you if they're alive or dead.
I immediately have forgotten almost all of their names. The only one I remember is Marty, because his name is said many times.
Yes.
You mentioned before we started the show that you took notes. God bless you. I have a single note. It says 2 things the British are not good at.
Yeah.
Not being transphobic and slasher movies.
Yes. Maybe the perfect British slasher movie is escaping my brain right now, but it does not seem to be their strong suit. And there are a lot of things that the English are good at. Going to far-flung corners of the world and stealing their treasures and bringing them back and putting them in the museum and going, hey, look at what we got. I mean, we were just walking out and we found this lying on the ground. Do you want to look at it? And when that country says, can I have it back? They're like, come on now. We got this fair and square when we invaded you and walked away. So they're very good at that. As you said, transphobia, A+, really great at it. Seemed to be leading the charge. Way to go. Any cause in which you and Nazis are in perfect alignment means you're the good guy. Those are the rules. I didn't make them up. And the other thing is that they're great at gothic horror. Now, our lead actress here, Caroline Munro, got her start in gothic horror movies. And then she kind of hit a horror streak again, a second act of horror movies, starting with Maniac and The Last Horror Movie, things like that. And then you come up to this, and she is 35 at this point. Now, granted, Caroline Munro, a gorgeous lady, but does she look like she's in high school? No. And yet no one here does.
And yet she and Marty, who is our killer, I mean, that's not, they don't really do much to hide that fact. No. They are the most convincing high school students while still being absolutely unconvincing.
Marty, at the very least, is a character that their choice is being made by that actor. He is going for
his choice is, remember Bud Cort? Everybody likes Bud Cort, right?
Yeah.
The Harold and Maude guy. I'm going to be like him, only psychotic.
Yes. I'm going to stretch him out. I'm going to make my mouth very wormy, and everything else is just going to fall into place. And then everyone else, it just goes into 2 camps, supposed men and supposed women. And I say that because there's no really defining characteristics for any of these other, what are basically the dead meat of this, the wheat for the chaff. They exist to die. They're complete a-holes. And at a certain point, my note was, is bullying a team sport? Because none of these people seem to be able to do it on their own. This is like bully socialism.
Yeah, this plan they have at the beginning to humiliate Marty, it takes like 12 people.
Yes.
and an inordinate amount of planning in advance to basically, be able to get a nude picture of him.
A nude picture of him. And then when that fails, they come up with a completely different, insane plan to humiliate him again, simply because they weren't able to humiliate him enough in their initial humiliation offering. It's just, I truly, this really put into retrospective, and this is not the first time we've had the whole bullying goes awry and we have a reason for a killer movie.
Well, that's basically the thrust of Terror Train.
True.
And
yes.
the thrust of Prom Night, and that's actually a well-worn trope in slasher movies is the nerd gets revenge.
Yes, and certainly at this point, Prom Night is 80, Terror Train is late 80, if not 81. I mean, it's just these movies have happened, and why they felt the need for it to happen again this deep into the 80s is truly astounding. It's like a movie out of time.
Well, it also throws you out there because the quality of the film, as far as just just production values and how it looks. I mean, I rented it on YouTube. I assume you have the Blu-ray?
Yes, I have a very fancy Blu-ray, but go on.
It looks like it was made in 1975. The reason, everything's dark, everything's grainy. The reason why this movie was changed, its title was changed from April Fool's Day to Slaughter High, is because they found out during filming, there's another movie called April Fool's Day.
Yes.
And I'm trying to think. Now, I haven't watched April Fool's Day in quite a while, but I am picturing in my head. I'm like, are you trying to tell me these fucking movies came out at the same time?
Yes. And in fact, the producers were approached by Paramount because they were on parallel tracks. Of course, nobody at Paramount had any idea this movie existed until it showed up at the Cannes Film Festival with the title April Fool's Day. And they're like, y'all, listen, here are all the marketing materials. Here's our release date. I will grant you that neither of us knew about the other, but we will pay you some money to give up this title. And the producer's like, well, how much money? And they said $100,000. And they're like, it's all yours. We don't fucking need it. And so they sold out April Fool's Day to Paramount, just like for pocket change for Paramount Pictures. And as a result, this movie still has all the April Fool's Day elements. But just when you think, well, I know what April Fool's Day is, they introduce the concept, which apparently is true in England, but I've never heard this before, that April Fool's Day stops at noon. And then if you pull a prank on somebody after noon, you're the fool. And that's why they're so adamant that Marty's going to stop killing them at noon, because he's following these arbitrary fucking rules from a place they're not even supposed to be.
Is that what that is? Okay.
That's what that is.
Okay, because I was just like, I don't know what the fuck this is. I'm just going to go with it.
If this is the advantage of having that Blu-ray, was the actual special features to explain the plot mechanics of this motherfucking travesty of a film that I enjoy, specifically the second act. But like, if you just walked into this thing and they're like, he can't kill us after noon because that's when April Fool's Day is done. Well, that's not how fucking days work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do think it was funny that they have decided they're just simply going to wait until it's afternoon rather than to try to continue escaping from this very large building.
Yes. This very large building, there's no possible way one person can, patrol, and yet he seems to be everywhere. Marty's abilities are, I'll let you get away with just about anything until the point I need to kill you, and then you're so fucking stupid, you'll fall into any trap I lay. How he could possibly know someone would take a bath in the middle of this is, he's a lot smarter than I gave him credit for.
Take a bath and not be aware of the concept of getting out of something that is causing you pain. This might be, I said when we did Deadly Eyes that Scatman Crothers, was the all new. Well, I've had a good run, just like, but this gal in this tub filling with acid just gives up so fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she pulls herself up by the curtain, which is more
she
than...
She has the strength to lift her legs up, but the wrong way. Like she lifts her legs up to look at them, and then puts them back into...
concept that I'm in acid.
Right, then puts them back down into the acid water.
If only she could magically levitate from her ass. If she farted really hard and that lifted her out of the water, maybe that's what she's going for.
But yeah, this is an all new. Yeah, well, there's nothing more I could do.
Yeah. So let's kind of, I say we don't have to go through this in order, but that's why I did my fucking notes. So who am I kidding? Of course, we're doing it in some sort of order. So we meet Marty and Carol. Now, Marty claims to be a sex machine, but I'm not entirely sure that the software and the hardware work together on that sex machine. More about that later. And he's been invited to, quote unquote, have some sex with Carol, who's played by former Bond girl Caroline Monroe, excuse me. And listen, like, she's been going to this high school for 7 years. She's no dummy, okay? But she is not only not dressed for this part because she looks like she's doing work in her home garden constantly in this movie.
As she might have been before she started filming that day.
Yes. But it looks like she just came off of it. Here's the other element. And it's a direct, link to Friday the 13th, that the music for this movie is composed by Harry Manfredini. And so my apologies to any time that I've bagged on Harry's music for the Friday the 13th franchise, because this is so much worse. And then when he gets to a point where someone's being chased by a killer, he just goes right back into Friday the 13th mode with zero, there's no consequences for me to just rip my own ass off. It sounds exactly like Part 5 music, to the point where I think he just fucking did Part 5 music.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my issues with this movie is I am unsure at various times if they are trying to make a legitimate slasher movie, or if they're trying to, do a parody of slasher movies.
Yeah.
Because you've got this very reminiscent of Friday the 13th music. You've got references to Friday the 13th. You've got someone, walking through the hallway say, wow, this is just like Halloween, which no, it's not. There are no scenes in Halloween that take place in which Michael Myers is chasing someone inside a high school. There's one scene that takes place in a high school.
I think they feel those are clever references, but this would need to have a legit sense of humor. And I think it never really seems to have humor in appropriate places, but then it finds it in the most ludicrous of moments, like that bathtub scene where you're like, who decided this was a scary? I mean, there are elements that I love about it, but they're not intentionally funny. They're unintentionally funny.
Well, I mean, the thing about the bathtub scene, it exists because, as we often discover in these movies, someone realized, we're halfway through this. We haven't seen tits yet. And you know what? Frankly, they're not very impressive.
But was the dick impressive? Did you see dick?
I did, and no. I mean, honestly, he did not look like he was ready to go at Caroline Monroe.
No. He doesn't. Listen, I'm a happily married man and everything, but someone's like, you're mainlining Caroline Monroe in her prime, Are you ready to go? I'm not like, I don't know. I'm kind of half flaccid at this point. And listen, the other thing is like they're shouting at him, "Where's the beef?" Which is a commercial reference that didn't occur until 1984. But this is taking place many years before that. There's a timey-wimey, when the fuck was this made element to it that it just can't avoid. It can't get out of its own way. The idea that this is a comedy masquerading as a slasher movie is something people say when they realize everyone's laughing at your movie. It's not that you intended it to be funny. It's that
and that happens.
I guess this is a comedy now.
That happens a lot. You know, with all kinds of movies. Like one good example is Showgirls. It's like, I admit, you pull a real Pee Wee Herman. I meant to do that.
It's rare for a group of 80s bullies or cool kids to actually know where the AV club equipment is and know how to use it. Like they have a sound person. They have a lighting person. To catch this guy naked in a shower with what the fuck is that condom? What is going on there with that condom?
Well, see, that's what I'm talking about. I think that they are trying for some elements of humor and just missing the mark in every way possible.
Yeah. Because it looks like something that you would just put over a cow's udder to keep it warm. It doesn't look like something you would put on your fucking penis with the like, oh, this is going to add to her pleasure. It looks like a rooster's comb. Like, that's not how vaginas work. That's not how penises work. That's not how anything works. They go through all this rigmarole to get Marty naked in a shower, and then they harass the living fuck out of him. They pick him up wet. They start dunking his head in the toilet, and you're like, well, I hate all of them. So when they die, this might be the first time we've come around to a group of people who are so heinous that I did kind of enjoy watching them die.
Yeah, and there's none of them. There isn't any one of them who, like, it's sort of implied that Caroline or Carol, whatever her character's name is, also Carol or something like that.
Her character's name is Carol. Yeah,
yeah, might have some regret over the situation because she has a nightmare about it. Yeah, but that's not really explored in any appreciable way. So, but as opposed to most slasher movies where you have a couple of characters who might be assholes, all of them are, and none of them are like the voice of reason. None of them are that was we shouldn't have done that. That was a terrible thing. Just nope. Just set up for the audience to be like, yeah.
Yeah, and they are constantly blaming Marty for the fact that they get into, like, it's Carrie.
But yeah, that part is definitely inspired by Carrie, right down to that their punishment is having to take extra gym classes.
Yeah, they're all Chris Hardigan here. Yeah, they're all unrepentant assholes, for sure. But because this was filmed in Surrey, England. All the characters here, with Carolyn Monroe kind of on the outside, these are all people plucked from an English acting school, or they're Americans going to school abroad, and they showed up to this like, "Are you American? Can you do an American accent? Would you like to be in a movie?" And it almost feels like everyone who said yes got a role, because these are people who, many of them you will never see in a movie again. And everyone who hasn't cast them has made the right decision. There's a pervasive mid-Atlantic accent, like they're all Katharine Hepburn, or they're over enunciating like they're a cowboy on a Monty Python sketch.
Yeah. And I mean, you also have the extra, added flaw that none of them other than Caroline Monroe are pleasant to look at. I mean, this one guy that I guess he's the head bully. Like, oh my God, he's got a mug on him that's just like, I mean, I'm the last person who should be face shaming anyone, but I mean, at least like in most slasher movies, even the bullies are reasonably good looking.
Yeah. It's a movie. Everyone's mug is going to be splashed on a screen 40 feet high. You want, I hate to be that person. You want some symmetrical elements to a person's face.
Yeah, I mean, he's got like
a person who does not possess one.
Yeah, no, but, I mean, he's got this like brow ridge. It's like, man, who told you to get into acting?
I don't know. Someone looked at him and they're like, I don't know. You could almost be a Travolta, but you came out of the mold press wrong. Like, it's. Who's the character in Fear No Evil who developed breasts and then threw himself off a balcony?
Yeah, he does kind of have that look. I kept expecting him to speak with like a Vinnie Barbarino, like exaggerated Brooklyn accent.
Exactly. Do you know that he's actually American and from Boston? He was born and raised in Boston. And that's how he sounds in his movie.
Yeah,
like someone who's definitely American and from Boston.
Like I presume this is to be some sort of like typical like small town high school, and like nobody sounds like they're from the same place. I don't know what kind of accent the gal who ends up in the bathtub is speaking with, but her line readings are something.
No,
she's
I stopped writing down the misappropriate, the odd way they pronounce things about halfway through, because that was all my notes were.
Like when she finds these gloves and she's like, my gloves! I've lost my prom night.
I haven't seen these since prom night. Where are you from? Where are you from? Because you're not from here.
Wherever here is, it's Doddsville.
It's like Chinatown. Forget about it, Jake. It's Doddsville. Like, there's no explanation for the vortex you find yourself in. That being said, because I do have the Blu-ray, and it is such a better version, because usually I will watch these things on my laptop only because I'm taking notes, and it's easier to pause something and run over to whatever I'm taking notes on and type there and then go back. But it was so fucking terrible, the copy I was watching. I'm like, no. I have the Blu-ray. It's going to be a pain in the butt, but I'd rather see this fucking movie. And here's the moment I was like, I'm glad I did. So outside of the girls' locker room where Marty's being tormented, there's a corkboard with various announcements on it. And there's one that reads April Fool's Day. And there's another one that says exam killer, kill or cure. See center pages. And center is spelled CENTRE. You know, like fucking Doddsville, America, USA.
I feel like that was like, possible alternate titles for the movie just stuck on the corkboard.
I'm always hoping for a, no handball in the hallway sort of message. So I always like to spy it, but there's no way I would be able to do it from the crapola versions that are available online. That being said, this was a movie that was notoriously difficult to find for a long time. It had skipped DVD for a very long time, and the copies that did come out late were in multi-packs that they sold in Walmart. And so finally, Vestron Video, which doesn't produce a bunch of stuff, but what it does very well. They came out with a rather pristine looking version, and you can see everything. But also the problem with that, Gina, is you can see everything.
No, I think I got the better deal in this.
Yeah. I don't know how they fit all the fucking half the senior class in the ladies' locker room. I don't know why they can't just bully this guy on separate occasions why there's so many plans to do it. But finally, a custodian comes by and he looks in the window and he goes, well, this isn't what I'm supposed to see in a ladies' locker room. And then I'm thinking, why does the ladies' locker room have a window you can see everything through?
I mean, maybe that's a thing in jolly old England. I don't know.
It's quite possible. But he gives the initial impression like, my name's Paul and this is between y'all. He ends up actually telling some sort of authority figure, the coach, who then, comes in and says, all right, this is fucking crazy. You cannot torment this kid this way. But then he's like, oh, by the way, kid who was tormented, what are you doing in here in the first place? Who fucking cares? Once someone strips you naked, sops you down, and holds your head into a toilet, you get a free pass from whatever you were doing before. I'm sorry. That's how it fucking works, coach. That coach, by the way, was originally supposed to be played by Telly Savalas. Wanted too much money.
Could you imagine?
Listen, it's my heart's fondest dream. Once I heard that this was supposed to be Telly Savalas, I'm retroactively mad they didn't make it Telly Savalas. Because once Paramount pays you $100 fucking grand, that's your Telly Savalas money, and I could have been watching it for fuck's sake. I want Telly Savalas screaming obscenities at these assholes. It would have been so much more gratifying than what we get.
Just imagine you're writing a script and you're like, I'm sure when you've written stuff, you imagine certain actors, in playing the roles. It's like, I really want Telly Savalas to play a high school coach.
I don't want to see the Kojak lollipop, but I want it implied that it's there. Because he would have worn that hat with a plum.
That's sure. Absolutely.
We were denied. But yeah, the coach berates, most of the thousands of people in this.
It appears to be the entire senior class, basically.
Yeah. Then they're all like throwing their own like hatred at Marty throughout this. Like, all of this is Marty's fault. But for whatever reason, Marty seems to roll with this. Like, this would have been soul crushing to me if this happened. And he's like, well, I got to go off and study. Like, he's like, another day, another fucking dollar. I've got one giant cracked lens, but I've got to do this chemistry homework. So fuck all y'all. And then they offer him a joint. He's like, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I learned from personal experience is that if somebody regularly picks on you, don't take shit from them. Like, just, they try to offer you something, assume that it is probably going to end badly for you.
Yes. But then Marty does something that I'm like, I've never seen that before. And then another character does this. So this must be some sort of British England way of smoking a joint, where you make this like contraption out of your two hands and keep the joint in between two of the fingers, and you suck it. Like they're making an apple bong out of your hands.
I have a question.
Sure.
When I do indulge in the devil's lettuce, I only do it in edible form, in gummies. Sure. What would be put into a marijuana cigarette that would cause one to have violent stomach cramps?
I don't know, but I'm assuming they have put, it looks like those little wrapped explosive gunpowder things that when you throw them on the concrete, they snap.
Oh, so these people are psychopaths then.
Oh, complete fucking psychopaths. The screenwriter, who's also one of the directors, and I say one of, because this movie has 3 fucking directors, and it doesn't appear that way at all. Based on the finished product, it doesn't seem like a random Django version of a movie. He's like, I went through the private school system. People were terrible to one another, and someone in the school had offered their enemy a cigarette that had those little jumping jack things in it, and it exploded in their face. And I thought, wouldn't that be great? I'm like, No, it wouldn't. But they also don't explain, like, yeah, did they coat the weed in, I don't know, Visine? Isn't that what they use in Wedding Crashers?
Yeah,
to
I
make
feel like
people poop violently?
if you managed to swallow it, nothing would happen.
Yeah. So yeah, they managed to, fuck with this joint to the point where he's got to go poop and throw up at the same time. So he's had quite a fucking day. But I swear to God, the invasion of Normandy has nothing on the planning going into not one, but two giant fucking pranks in the same goddamn day. And so while he's in the bathroom, Barbarino Light decides to go into the chemistry room and fuck with the chemicals and pour some white powder into whatever he's making. It's like, you need to know something about chemistry to pull off this fucking prank. Isn't the whole point you don't like him because he's a brainiac and you're a cool guy? How does this work? How does this world operate? I don't know. But as soon as Marty's back, he's like, I'm going to continue on like nothing fucking happened. And of course, the entire lab explodes around him to the point where half of his face is burned off. And then everyone's standing in the doorway like, oh, this prank has gone terribly wrong. And then Marty reaches down and grabs a white hot pipe that's across his lap with his hands and just screams while they all watch. Just like, oh, this isn't good. And there's a time cut where finally the ambulance people are taking poor Marty away, half of his face burned off. And Caroline Monroe is like, I'm very sorry this happened to you. And Marty tries to strangle her to death with his burned hands.
Well, I'm not sure if that part actually happened or if she dreamt that part, because that's the one scene where it is vaguely suggested that any of these people feel bad about what's happened.
Yes. But also there's the second half, and then we're going to get into full spoiler territory, as we're wont to do.
I mean, I already
thing is a dream, Gina.
Well, that's true. That is true. Yes.
So none of it makes sense, and the reason none of it makes sense is because it is a dream, but they didn't film it to be made as a dream. So we're in a dream within a dream, and I'm not sure which dream takes precedence. Whose dream is in charge of this dream narrative?
It's a real
Carol's or Marty's?
It's a real pair dream sitch.
What is that sketch in Kids in the Hall?
I had the pair dream again.
I had the pair dream again. This feels like the horror version of the pair dream. And the pair dream is a horror movie. It's a mini horror movie in Kids in the Hall's program, but this, I don't know who's really in charge of the dream. I don't know if I'm going to wake up in the middle of a threesome I can't explain and my mustache disappears.
Or why you have a black eye.
Yeah. We might never know. And he is dreaming about Slaughter High. So maybe he's in charge.
It's kind of a disappointment when you realize, none of these people paid for what they did.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a fumble. It's a hard fumble. And I'm not entirely sure why they tack on the dream thing, other than I feel like they just didn't have enough plot. Like this goes in at a certain point in the third act, you're just chasing Caroline Monroe down hallways endlessly. And you're like, I get it. This has to be 90 minutes or you won't get paid. But it's terrible. And then what the ultimate ending of this should be is that if you establish the rules that he cannot prank you to death after 12 p.m., have him corner her at 12:01 and not kill her and walk away. And you're like, okay, they established a rule and then they abided by it. And they're like, no, we got to murder her. But then we don't have an ending. And they dreamt up that bullshit. And then it's like fucking the Australian Patrick. Have you ever seen the Patrick from Australia?
I believe so, yeah.
Because that has a great fucking ending, but then the middle of it is like, I don't know, a lot of doctors eating rat intestines. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, Carol wakes up and she apparently sleeps inside of a brown velvet spaceship, which I was like, wow, that's a lot for a bed. And then I saw the rest of her fucking apartment, Gina. It looks like disco exploded in her house. She, on top of her TV, she has a fucking gold Tutankhamun. In her sunken living room is Barry Gibb hiding under her couch. Every room you go into is weirder than the last one. It's like it's trying to put you into some sort of crazed red devil dust tailspin that made Helen Hunt jump out the window in that ABC After School special.
Yeah, when she walks that living room, you honestly expect to hear "Love to Love You, Baby" playing in the background. And again, this is 1980. Now I realize that it was filmed a couple of years earlier, but
yeah.
If you were to guess when this movie was released, you would never be able to guess.
No. You would never think that this was released in the year of our Lord, 1986. Like the fact that this was released after, Return of the Jedi is just a bigger piece of science fiction than Return of the Jedi. Every time you go into a different room, you're inundated with crazier and crazier wallpaper. And then she goes into her kitchen and it looks like a fucking Friendlies, Gina. My eyes were bugging out. And then she gets called by her manager. Her manager is Dick Randall. And yes, that Pieces poster in the background is not just a clever reference. He produced Pieces.
Which is, for me, a better movie than this.
Yes. Yes, Gina, you're right. Pieces is like fucking Halloween next to this.
At least Pieces understands, it's right there in the title. It's exactly what you think it is. It knows what kind of movie it's trying to be. Is it always successful? No. Is it always coherent? Absolutely not. Not for 1 minute. But
at least its incoherence is coherent. Like you know not to trust it at a certain point. You're like, I don't know where this is coming from, but it's all so crazy that it's just part of a crazy package. So when Kung Fu breaks out in the middle of it, you're like, okay, sure, why not? When someone's dick gets ripped off that you've seen previous to this, just silhouetted in the fucking moonlight, there's full ass pain. So I know how much is getting ripped out of that guy's package. Like, you're like, makes sense. Makes perfect fucking sense next to this.
And you know what? I found Kendall to be an implausible leading man, but he might as well be George Clooney compared to the lead guy in this movie.
Truly. And the American accents are more convincing, even though I know they're being dubbed well after the fact. So, yeah. Dick Randall, that's a real person. and I put that in dick fingers. But, yeah, he's like trying to get Carol, who's apparently some sort of actress model, to appear in a horror film, which is another thing this could have been. This all could have been the actual horror movie that he is trying to get her to star in. That would have been another ending to this, but they didn't go in that direction. I don't know if I would be happier or madder about it after the fact. So then we learn through her and her roommate, who's also one of the many bullies, that their high school reunion is this weekend. And she's not going to do this movie. She'd rather go to her fucking high school reunion. And so we cut to Vinnie Barbarino driving in a very American VW bug through the English countryside to get to his American high school. And he happens upon another one of the fucking bullies who's just hitchhiking her way there. And she goes, oh, I thought I would have to walk all the way from the 7-Eleven to get there. the 7-Eleven. The fuck are you talking about? Like, this is fucking pastoral. What is going on?
I think they really want to establish that this is definitely America.
Yes. Another way they attempt to do that is they keep introducing semi-American stereotypes portrayed by people who don't understand them. So Nancy is kind of a hippie, but doesn't really give off that vibe. She just has long hair and flowy dresses. And then there's the people who come to rescue them, Stella and Joe. Stella in particular is dressed like she's auditioning for an unregistered regional version of Hairspray and is the person designating the cast to talk like this.
For some reason.
Yeah, she's like, for what my kid was into the Octonauts when he was 2, and all the fish in the Octonauts either talked in Cockney or Brooklyn accents. She sounds like an Octonauts fish. It just doesn't make any fucking sense for her to talk like this. And Joe is the only one of the bullies who even approaches someone who you might go, that's a good person, only because he has a developed character. He's the mechanic guy. He fixes things, and that's his personality. And that's it. But Joe as a character is someone who is really trying to be in the glass menagerie, but has learned English phonetically.
I am amazed that you remember any of the names of these characters, because
there are so many. I couldn't figure out who Joe was.
Yeah,
I wrote down the name Joe originally with 3 X's because I couldn't decide if he was Ted or Carl or Frank. Who are these people? We're a character horror show, and none of these people have characters. Joe is guy who fixes things. I couldn't tell you what Ted is. A human, maybe, but there's no real proof of that other than the fact that when he's photographed, light doesn't go through his body. I guess he's a real person, but there's no defining characteristics to who he is in this movie at all.
I mean, I do think it's funny that it's their high school reunion. It's 10 years, so they're supposed to be 27, 28, and they're still not convincing.
No, they don't look like convincing 27-year-olds either. And the weird thing is, many of them are younger than 27. But I think this is photographed with such a layer of Euro sleaze that they just don't look like real people. They look like caricatures who were granted the gift of life by the Blue Fairy. If you were invited to a high school reunion and only 8 people showed up, would you stick around?
No, I am not that particularly nostalgic about my high school experience. And
I would never been invited to my high school reunion.
I would assume I would be looking up in the rafters for like a dripping bucket of something or other.
Yeah. I have no romance for my high school, and my high school has completely forgotten about me. I don't think there's any institution that genuinely remembers me with fondness. That's my guess, right? It's a good thing I own a business with my wife, because I don't think anyone else would think back on me and go, oh, it was great when he was around. I don't think that exists. I'm not being there's no proof of this whatsoever outside of maybe some friends at Universal theme parks. I think that might be the only exception.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's the idea of a high school reunion now seems just so foreign with Facebook and all anyway, that like I know when my high school class had their 25th reunion, and just like somebody's like, oh, we're gonna plan in 25th. I'm like, why? I already know what you all look like, and that's the only thing anybody cares about.
Yeah. I don't understand the appeal, but then again, I've never been given the opportunity. Like this is as big of a science fiction concept as anything else. But if I were invited and only 8 people showed up, I'd be like, yeah, I don't have time for this shit.
Yeah, they are like the whole school is locked up. Mm-hmm. They're the only ones there. They are mildly put out by this.
They think it's dumb, but none of them really make a hardcore play to leave. Like Carol's like, I think I might go, and then miraculously a door opens for them. And then out of nowhere, Frank arrives. And I only know this because everyone is really kind of shitty to Frank from the moment he arrives until the moment he dies. It's just like he drives up on him and he disembarks from a moving motorcycle. And I'll be honest with you, Gina, I've seen Muppets arrive to an event with more class and dignity than Frank does. And then one of the characters is like, Joe, I do declare I am freezing my boot off. What? That's not English. The emphasis is on the wrong syllable in each syllable that you're hitting. Oh my God. And then they get into this place and Frank or Joe or Jimmy or Frank Bob or Scooby Doo, I don't know what their fucking names are. He pops up with a flashlight under his chin and he's wearing the Friday the 13th Part 5 poster art hockey mask. And is that where this comes from? Like someone's like, we have a new looking hockey mask. It's over here in England. And someone's like, I got to put that on a fucking poster. That looks amazing. Let's put a laser in those eyes.
Yeah. And again, these characters are supposed to be 28 and we're still doing the boo thing.
Yeah. They eventually they go searching from room to room to room. And this is where we find that there's a bed in a wood paneled room. Like, why do they need a bed there? Did Marty set that up? Is that the custodians, the caretaker's bed? We're never told.
There's a bed. There's a bathtub in another room, like a full bathtub.
Yeah. Remember everyone's high school bathtub where you all would take a bath on a dare? Can you think of a worse place to take a bath than your motherfucking high school?
I never once got completely naked in my high school. Like I mean, I would do like that whole, like if I had to change for gym, I would do the whole, like, I would only change one garment at a time. Mm-hmm. Like the whole thing, like in school where like in like high school movies where everybody's just ass naked and just chatting and throwing towels at each other and all. Mm-hmm. It's like that. No. Everybody is very self-conscious about their bodies in high school and do not want to either be looked at or be caught looking at other people, which I don't know which one of those is worse. They're both pretty bad.
And the other thing is, like, the reason they chose this location is because it was condemned and it was about to be mowed down. This location, weirdly enough, used to be an insane asylum. Not my words, theirs. And Caroline Munro had been at this location for one other filming gig that she had. Can you guess what it is, Gina?
I don't know.
Goody Two. It's a fucking Adam Ant location where they did Goody Two shoots.
Is that right?
Yes.
I should have known that. I love that song.
If you watch these things back to back, you will actually recognize locations. I mean, they look entirely different because they've destroyed this place in order to make it look run down. And then they've glammed it up to make it look like a rich person's mansion for Goody Two Shoes. But yeah, Caroline Munro has been, in 2 iconic pieces of art that have taken place in the same former insane asylum. Speaking of asylums, Barbarino gives us a long monologue about what happened to Marty. He used one particular phrase he used is, his mind would never be fit for human company again. Really? You're telling me AI can make this shit happen? No, you got to write this down and then never touch it again. This is perfect first draft writing, everybody. And if we let computers do this, it's never going to be this good.
Yeah, it's a basically, again, nothing that happens in this movie except maybe like one or two of the kills is original. Everything like this is the legend has it that he's still out there. That's a take on that. It's just instead of around a campfire, they're in a decaying high school.
Yes, they're just drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon around a plastic table with Cuban sandwiches. They're trying so hard to hide most of the labels of the beer because they're undoubtedly very English brands, but they got their hands on 1/6 of Pabst Blue Ribbon and they're like, don't open them because we're going to need to use them again and again and again. But I just don't think I would spend a bunch of time in that high school if that's the condition I find it in, because everywhere you look, and they look everywhere, looks like Freddy Krueger's nightmare. Not a nightmare Freddy Krueger would appear in. The bad dreams he has.
And the funny thing is, this building supposedly has a caretaker.
Yes. His name is Digby. He's the former janitor who did not want to get involved in the bullying incident. So he minds his own business, but also alerted an authority figure. So, of course, he is played with the utmost care and racial sensitivity. And, of course, he's killed first because we haven't learned anything. This is 1986, but in Europe, the black guy dies first has not gone out of style.
We're still killing the only black character first.
The only one. No one else has. There's the vaguest of rate. Like this is the DEI when it comes to Slaughter High is not at its best. Shirley is. I don't. Obviously, she's not Caucasian 100%, but Shirley's just so out to lunch in terms of the things that comes out of her mouth. I'm not sure what her backstory is, but Digby, he seems like a swell fella. And they're like, he's like, you can't be here. This is shut down. And they're like, well, it's our high school reunion. He's like, okay, give me a beer and I'll let it happen.
Yeah. He really flatters them by saying, hey, what are you kids doing here? You kids.
And Barbarino, it's like, you remember me, right? And he's like, no. No memories for me. You are a blank fucking slate. I'm sorry to be the first person.
I remember that puss, man.
I mean, you seem like an asshole and you'd think that would be memorable, but this high school has turned out many an asshole. So I'm sorry. You do nothing.
Yeah, there's been some real legendary dickwads walking through these halls.
And so he barely gets a sip of that Michelob before the Joker, which is really just Marty. But I wrote down the Joker because I couldn't remember who the actual villain of this thing was. Picks him up by the throat, which again takes a lot of Voorhees level forearm strength, and slams the back of his head into this door with the nail hanging out of it. So he's reverse impaled onto this door and then crucifies him. Like this man did nothing wrong. Why are we killing this guy?
Yeah, I mean, and again, it immediately disavows the idea that this is a revenge plot.
Yes, he's just killing people is what it comes down to. Sure, the vast majority of the people deserve to get killed. And if I had it within my power, they would have been killed a second time just for funzos. But Digby, innocent. He has done nothing wrong. He does not deserves this fate, and he certainly doesn't deserve to be the first person to die. Gina, can you explain to me why Ted, and if you can remember who that is,
no,
there's an extra $10 in it for you.
No.
why can Ted shotgun a beer better than Frank? Why is Frank, quote unquote, past it?
I don't know.
The thing is, if you have no idea, you haven't seen this movie, and you're just listening because you like to hear us yak, and you're thinking, boy, I wish I knew the difference between those two people. There is no difference between those two people.
There are four male characters, and the only way you could tell one of them apart from the other is that he's very ugly. The other, and that is the lead guy. He is the one you have to look at the most, he's
the most prominent face.
Yeah.
Is the worst face they could find out of all the male faces. And then one guy is kind of blonde.
One guy's kind of blonde. One guy's got kind of a weird sort of almost like 1950s kind of pompadour thing going on. And then there's the other guy.
Yes. Joe and Frank are essentially out of the same mold press, but they ran out of filling for one of them. It makes no particular difference why, but Ted shotguns this beer and he's like, oof. And he looks down at his tum-tum and he's like, oh, that doesn't look good. And then his stomach fucking explodes. It turns into silly putty and explodes.
Like his guts start falling out. It's like, once again, like, what did they put in that joint? What did they put in this beer? Like, well, I mean, I guess it's supposed, according to the Wikipedia page, it's supposed to be acid, which again, I'm pretty sure you would notice that like in your throat.
Yeah, before you would notice that on the way down.
Right.
You wouldn't get all the way to your intestines before you're like.
But like he disembowels it. Like his guts disembowel themselves.
His guts decide we've had enough. And they try to make a very deliberate escape through his belly button. And it does not go well. And it explodes all over everyone. And this is when Shirley gets blood on her face and tries to find the high school bathtub, and everyone else runs in a different direction.
Yeah, her immediate thought is, I have to clean myself. Mm-hmm. Not like, how did that happen? Or I got to get out of here. Or she's like, nope, got to strip down.
Yeah.
Get in a bathtub.
Even though I've only been splashed with blood in my face, I've got to get completely naked and get into a high school bathtub and what looks to be something that should have been destroyed while they were going to school there.
Yes.
The rest of the crew, they head in a different direction. They discover that they're locked in. And when Nancy, the semi-hippie girl, goes to grab the metal bars, she's electrocuted. But another one of the guys is able to wiggle out underneath. He kicks the metal grate enough with his rubber shoes so he can slip past it. And Carol gives him the keys to her Beamer. And he's like, aha, I'll drive away and I'll get the authorities. But wouldn't you know it, the car has trouble starting. And then he notices in the rearview mirror, it's Marty in his Joker mask. And Marty stabs him through the driver's seat with a sword, I guess. And yes, that's right, baby. We got ourselves a get bunked. And that's when I knew we had to talk about this.
It's a get bunked, but I feel like it's a wasted get bunked.
No, I'm going to argue with you about this, because what happens after that is so impossible a set of circumstances that it defies logic and my very concept of reality, because Marty is able to somehow sneak Carl's dead body out of the front seat of that car without any lights turning on, pose him by a wrought iron fence by stabbing his back and arms through the sharp parts of that wrought iron, then do a dipsy doodle in the Beamer to go back and shine the headlights on Carl. And then Carl, the actor playing Carl, continues to breathe and move while he's dead. And I'm like, yeah, This was all worth it for me to get to that point. I love it when corpses move and breathe. It's one of my favorite things.
And then at some point while doing this, he also manages to change the plumbing to pump acid into the pipe that is filling the bathtub that Shirley was it that Shirley is luxuriating in.
The very idea that he figured at some point one of these dumb motherfuckers is going to take a bath at their old high school.
At their old high school.
You know, what we all plan to do when we go back for our high school reunion, get one last bath in.
Just get nude and take a soak.
So I don't know if he had enough hot water so that it initially starts off as a hot water bath, or she only uses cold water. I don't understand. The math is not mathing.
She's filling the tub, and then doo-doo water comes out, and she starts takes a very long time to react to this.
Yes.
And then her reacting is, wanly calling out help and then collapsing into the water and letting it dissolve her body, which we do get a nice stop motion effect. I appreciate that. When
you get stop motion skeleton face, you're in for a good time. And the crazy thing is her head never goes under the water. I don't know what part of the acid bath she's getting on her head to dissolve the face that fast. But it leaves you with a skeleton head in stop motion. And then when they find the body, it's made even better because she's completely a blood skeleton at that point. With the skeleton still screaming in the classic Mystery Science Theater 3000. And you're like, this film suddenly got good. This is the movie that you want this to be.
Folks, it don't get better than this, unfortunately.
Oh, no. I would this is not I'm trying to prove Gina wrong podcast, but I believe there is a segment that happens after this that is that really rises to the very top of my enjoyment of the film. And then the third act happens, and I think I have 3 sentences written about it. Because for whatever reason, after this, Joe has found a tractor. It's a riding mower, but they keep referring to it as a tractor. They're going to try to fix up so they can drive through the barn doors. Once again, Friday the 13th, part 5ing this. And Joe's like, give me an hour and I'll figure it out. And so they all wander away while Joe fixes this up. And of course, Joe's wife, Shirley, takes this opportunity to go, listen, I've seen several people die in horrendous ways. I just found a friend of mine boiled down to an acid skeleton. I've seen someone's guts explode, but I need someone up in my guts. You know what I mean? It's time to cuck my husband in real time with Frank, a guy who can't get off his own motorcycle and apparently is so past it, he can't shotgun a beer.
Well, see, again, this comes back to, is this occasionally trying to parody slasher movies? Because you have a character getting naked, in a situation that does not call for stopping what you're doing to get naked. And then you have other characters who decide, well, this is the time to go off and have sex, which is a trope in slasher movies. How much of this is self-aware?
I don't know, but no one after the fact has admitted to the fact that this has any level of irony to it. So I just think they thought this was what a slasher
they're just checking off boxes then.
Yes. They're looking at what's there and they're like, this has to be a part of it. But they never saw student bodies. So they're completely unaware of what the parody of this is. So I just don't believe it. And
that's the point. It came out so late in the game that you can't help but think, wow, this is like student bodies. I was going to say it's like the top secret of slasher movies, but that already happened. It was student bodies.
The other thing that I think we should watch, and maybe this is not a main feed because this is even harder to watch than Slaughter High, is National Lampoon's Class
Oh
Reunion.
my God. You know what? I watched that much too many times as a teenager, probably because it was always seemed to be on, because it was one of those like cable cheapies that they got as part of a package deal. That we'll show ET and then 20 movies like this. All I remember is that Anthony Kiedis' dad is in it, and Garrett Graham. Because he went through a phase where he would just be in anything.
He needed work. He has a family, I assume, or at least, he's taking care of somebody, or he just needed rent.
Or drugs. I'm not judging. Yeah. I'm just saying he was in a lot of 80s garbaggio.
Absolutely. And so that's all I remember of it too, but it just does. I have the Blu-ray. So I think that's a stay tuned for the Patreon, because I feel like we have to understand the parody elements just to see if this has anything in common with him beyond all the tropes.
I'm pretty sure there was
repeating tropes.
I'm pretty sure that it was a bully nerd comes back for revenge thing. I think it was pretty close to
100%
what happens in this.
100%. But and we won't know until we rewatch it, but I just feel like that might have some clues. Pandemonium is another.
Oh man, now you're really digging deep. That's another one I haven't seen since I was a kid.
I mean, these are movies that when they were announced, I'm like, I should own that, because eventually we're going to want to figure out what that is. We've done the best. It's never going to get better than Student Bodies in terms of a real 80s parody of slasher movies. But I do think it is worth it to examine where those other ones just go off the rails, or they just don't reach as high, or maybe they do, and I'm not giving them any credit for it. Anyways, Susie, Carol's roommate, arrives in the world's largest car. She goes down the hallway where all the light bulbs seem to turn on and off in a very Freddy Krueger-esque sequence. And then Marty has produced a life-size portrait of himself at the end of one of these hallways and reaches his hands through the photo and fade to black. She just dies of editing at that point.
Yeah, it was not important enough to show her die.
No, it's one of those things I thought just existed in the trailer. I didn't know it actually happened in the movie. So yeah, Joe saw a trailer and a tractor rather, a riding mower. He's going to fix it up. Barbarino is like, hey, you tell me when this is ready to go, because I can't wait to leave this school of death. You send up a warning, loud and clear. And you're like, are you attempting an Italian thing there? Is he a plumber? Is he in the Lizard Kingdom with pipes?
I was going to say, is he a Mario?
I think he might be a secret Mario. He is the worst Mario brother. That's for damn
sure.
Yeah,
he's a Mario brother they don't talk about.
And for good fucking reason. After you've seen so many acid-eaten bodies, it's time to fuck. So Stella seduces Frank by telling him that the child that she and Joe have is actually Frank's. And she gives him a specific time and place where it was conceived.
I guess.
And he's like, oh, I guess we have to fuck now.
Sure.
I don't know what the math is not mathing in terms of making this make sense. Again, maybe it's the dream logic. I don't really know. Joe, meanwhile, has propped up this riding lawnmower with this jack. And Marty comes in, removes the jack. Joe tries to keep up the mower off of his body by holding it up by its axle. And Marty cuts his forearms to the point he can't hold it up anymore. And then it just mows through his lower body in a torrent of very unconvincing blood.
Yes.
this is all happening in the middle of the movie, everyone.
Yeah.
We are like in the 45-minute to 55-minute range here, where all of this takes place. Frank, meanwhile, is impotent. So Stella has a plan. Call him gay. And the thing is, Gina, it works. So
somebody saw Looking for Mr. Goodbar.
I would say stay tuned for Looking for Mr. Goodbar, but A, it's very hard to find. And B, it's depressing as fuck.
It's the bleakest movie ever made. I just feel like both of us will take up cigarette smoking immediately after watching it.
It doesn't make it look good because it's the only satisfying thing in the entire movie, because everyone is living lives in which you figure like death is the best way out for them. But yeah, Frank's convinced into having sex. He gets hard by being insulted. And then it suddenly goes from bad sex to, all right, that's starting to get really, really good. Then the camera pans over. It turns out that Marty has connected the bed frame to an electrical panel. And just as Stella's about to get off, she gets off all right, off of planet Earth when she's exploded.
And not a minute too soon.
And this is the moment I think it is the explosive crescendo to Slaughter High. If you turned it off after this, you'd miss one great thing, but you wouldn't miss anything else that's great. Because seeing this woman stick her tongue out, have an explosive electronic orgasm, it's the best this movie will get.
I will say, there's a couple great moments of very creative Foley work, but yeah, this is probably like the peak moment.
And I assume Frank dies as well. He kind of rolls off. He has that deadly eyes exit.
Just like, what? Oh, well.
Okay. Listen, I've died by electrocution through my penis, and it just affects me faster than it does Stella. But I also think he needs to roll off of her so that she can have an extended period of time where she's just topless. I think that's the reason why it happens. But we never see Frank beyond this except for his Force ghost later on. It is after this that we are introduced to the concept that April Fool's Day ends at noon.
Of course.
You know, like we all know. Barbary knows, like, he's stuck to the rules so far. He has? What? He is stuck to rules so far? That is a news fucking flash to me. And then Skippy says, listen, all we have to do is stay awake until noon tomorrow, and then we're in the clear. Time cut. He's asleep. They're all asleep. And no repercussions are, they just got to sleep for fun. So I assume Marty has also gone to sleep during this period of time, or he just wants them awake, or he likes a time challenge. I don't know what it is. He grabs Skippy and he tries to hang him. And this is where we learn that Marty is not an Eagle Scout because he's got a bad knot game.
Yes.
Skippy falls to the ground. We will not see Skippy again for a little while. Don't worry about it. Then we have an extended chase of both Nancy and Carol blaming one another for the predicament they found one another in. And Nancy finally figures out a way to get outside the school. And then the entire photography scheme of this movie changes.
I want to stop you for a second.
Sure.
Does anybody at any point in this motion picture think to attempt to see if any telephones work?
No. This is a high school that has built-in ladies' locker rooms with windows and a bathtub.
And a bed.
But no phones.
But no phones that might be working somewhere.
No. No. And that could have easily been answered by someone picking up a fucking phone in the office, and it's like
they don't even try. Like they go through periods where they come up with an idea, and then they're like, well, all right, I guess we'll just sit and wait.
Until they don't want to wait.
You know, they also don't.
Like, fuck this noise. I'm finally getting out of here. And then she wandered. Like, I don't know how Marty's able to corral her into a hole in the ground, but that's what he does. He just looks at her a certain way, and she's like, I can't help it. I've got to fall into this. Is that a shitter? Is that a fucking coal shale pit? What is that? With a steam pipe built into it. What is inside of there, Gina?
That's like that was where the bad kids went.
I guess
that's where the kids had, you know, went after they would draw that S.
The Suzuki S.
Yes,
on their,
or they would
on their Trapper Keeper.
Or they were like Carb Slayer. Satan
right.
laughs as you eternally
wear a
rot.
heavy metal t-shirt to school when they're not allowed to.
Exactly.
And you drown in a shale pit. And then when we see her later, she's not covered in whatever the fuck is in that. Like, did Marnie haul her out of there? Did he use a hook? How the fuck did he get that body out of there? How did she die? We're never told.
Yeah, another thing that they either did not think of or simply didn't think was worth trying was they did not attempt to look for the groundskeeper.
No, Carol eventually runs into him in that sort of Friday the 13th. Now we see where he's placed all the bodies.
Right, but before that, nobody thinks to say, hey, you know, isn't there a caretaker here?
Right.
At least two of them know there's someone else there.
Yeah.
But like no one actually says, hey, let's go find that guy. Maybe he can help.
No. So basically the rest of it is an extended chase sequence.
Capital E extended.
Oh my God. Like, again, like as someone is off stage going stretch throughout this, and it just goes nowhere. We run into a blood toilet for some reason.
Like, yeah, he sets up a blood toilet.
She flushes the toilet and is like, oh, there's blood. And she's like, no. And like, how the fuck? He rigged a fucking blood toilet? For what? For why? What do you get out of the blood toilet? Is there a ghoulie in there? We never find out.
I do think that she accidentally kills Skip. Is that the ugly guy?
Yeah, that's the one highlight here.
Yeah, it's mostly because
she murders somebody unintentionally, and you're like, you know what? I'm happy.
Yeah, well,
this is what I want.
It's amusing to me because the sound effect for her putting this axe in his face sounds like someone's taking a bite out of a red delicious apple.
And that might be the sound effect for it, to be honest with you. It would not surprise me in any way, shape, or form. He finds a javelin at some point and starts poking at her through curtains. It's just the other thing that right before that hatchet to the face of Skippy is that there's this thing where she's hiding from him on the other side of a wall and there's an open doorway. And then he comes around, he looks fast, and you hear this like wind chime that's supposed to be the little jingle bells on the end of his Joker mask. Doesn't that kind of put you at a disadvantage in the ninja department?
Yeah, no one
How do you
hears
sneak up on somebody sounding like a fucking wind chime.
No one hears him coming. Nothing.
No. So they're just running after one another down hallways, and Carol's, at least has one murder on her hands. So she doesn't mind doing another one. So eventually Marty attacks her and she fucking hikimbos this dude through a window, defenestration, down from a one floor down onto the other. And he fucking recovers. Like, good for him. He takes off the mask. Marty's the Joker. Like,
surprise.
A twist that everyone saw coming. He's got one missing eye. He's kind of half skeleton-y. And then they corners her in the women's locker room. And you think, okay, this is when she turns the tables. This is when there's some sort of reversal. This is when April Fool's Day runs out. No, he just stabs her through the gut with a javelin. And he's like, yay, I did it. And I guess we're supposed to feel happy. We're supposed to feel some kind of way. But then we have this fucking House on Sorority Row acid freak out where he starts to see all the faces of all the people he's murdered.
And also from Maniac. The same thing happened in Maniac. Where
Yes. Another Caroline Munro movie. So, like, this is, again, it's taking these elements you've seen in movies that premiered from 1980 to 1983, and it's happening in the far distant future of 1986 without any irony, without any improvement, without any introspection. They're just repeating these beats. And everyone appears like the Michael Jackson's Thriller version of themselves, just kind of gray and green. And then Caroline Munro, they've put a wig on her that looks like Gossamer, the monster from the Looney Tunes. It's in the shape of Gossamer on top of her head. And it's not commented on. It's just presented like this is the way you would see it. And they all go oogly boogly at him. Cut to mental institution. And a nurse comes in and says, "Oh, Marty, you had surgery. You're waking up. They fixed your face. Everything's going to be great." And then a doctor's like, "What? Ho there. Hi there. What's going on in there?" There's a lot of screaming. And he comes in and there's a person like struggling with someone in bed. And that person turns around, the nurse turns around and it's Marty.
He stabs the doctor in the eye with a needle and it makes this little like cork popping noise.
Yeah. That's the way it sounds.
Yeah, it kind of, reduces the dramatic element of it.
This movie's idea of drama is highly overrated. So he murdered that nurse, hid the body, and is like, the way I'm going to get out of this is I'm going to dress like this nurse. And the only other time I've seen that is the fucking Dark Knight. So is the Dark Knight stealing from Slaughter High, Gina?
I don't get Christopher Nolan as much of a slasher fan, so I'm going to say that's probably a coinky dink.
Oh, I don't know. Whenever I see him, the first question I'm going to have, "Hey, you modern master of cinema," supposedly, we've decided. I don't know how it fucking
big Slaughter High fan, are you?
I think you owe a little apology to Slaughter High for stealing that nurse gag. And then he goes over to the window, takes the bandage off. He's like, "I gotta rip this half of my face off."
That's a shame because they did good work. He just looks normal again.
Yeah. And he's like, "No, I don't need to be normal. I need to have half my face missing.
I need to pull
I regained an eye.
I need to pull a real Phantom of the Opera here.
I need to get in some French sewers," which is a lot easier to do from England where he is and not Doddsville where it's supposed to be. So yeah, that's the movie, y'all. Anything else that we didn't cover?
That is the entire movie.
How the fuck did we talk about this? Just the two of us for an hour and a half.
I said to myself, surely we won't go more than an hour on this.
That's the thing in my head. This is 55 minutes tops, and yet here we are. So let's choose our own death venture where we decide of all the deaths in this motion picture. If we were forced to die in one of those ways, which one would we choose? Why? So we've got head impaled on a door hanger, crucified by nails. Stomach explodes from Pabst Blue Ribbon. A get bunked by sword in a BMW. Boiling acid bath with skeleton face. Grabbed by death hands from life-size photo. And where did he get that fucking photo? Did he go to Kinko's and go, "Listen, I know, don't be distracted by the fact I have half a face. Here's a photo of me inexplicably taken in high school. Please blow this up to life size." And like, we can do that. Chopped in half by a riding mower. Electrocuted in mid-orgasm. Whether you're the guy, whether or not you're the girl, that's the way you're going. drowned in a coal shale pit, hatchet to the face from someone who's supposed to be your friend, stabbed by a javelin, or needle in the eye. Gina, you go first.
I mean, the hatchet to the face, besides being quick, that sound effect just cracks me up. It's a little like crunch, like red delicious.
Yes. No, it is a way to go, because a lot of these are very painful, right? Normally, I love a good get punked, but you're getting stabbed right in the middle of the chest, and then you're being posed on a wrought iron fence. There's a lot of movement going on there that I don't like. I definitely don't want to drown, and I don't like eye stuff. So maybe electrocuted mid-orgasm, because, at least I'm insulted before it happens. At least my sexuality.
I mean, do you want to be the insulter or the insultee?
I feel like the part of me that enjoys humiliation wants the insultee. Why else did I get into podcasting? Because I like myself? Get the fuck out of here.
Fair point.
So Josh Hollis does all of our artwork. Go to revengebodymemphis@bandcamp.com to get this theme and all of our remixes. Bite Size is what we're doing on our off week. We watch a segment for a horror anthology, but we don't watch the whole thing. We just watch either the best one or the worst one out of that movie, and you get to decide which one that is. We have a Patreon where you can hear all our bonus content, including bonus movies, chat by chat, where we're taking your questions, and movie commentaries. We're going through the Friday the 13th franchise. Gina, where can people find you on these here internets?
I write about movies and television at thespool.net. I have a Substack. It's GinaWatchesThings.substack.com. And I am on Twitter in its dying days still under Gina Does Things.
Do it today, people. Check it out. I've gotten to the point where I've started asking former guests for their emails, because I'm pretty convinced that Twitter's going to go away, and you're going to hear a lot of guestless episodes in the future, because 95% of our guests have come via Twitter. Rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you listen to us. We have not had a new review in a while, and I think we deserve a good review from you. Even if you've reviewed us before, review us again. What are they going to do? Say you're wrong, you're right in your good opinions about us being excellent. But that just about does it. Don't worry, folks. The body count will continue. For myself and for Gina. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.